In 1954, a working-class mother in Chicago melted pure beeswax and rosewater on her tiny kitchen stove. This simple, thick cream kept her face entirely free of deep wrinkles for the next 40 years. She never bought a single expensive glass jar from a fancy department store cosmetic counter. That exact miraculous homemade cold cream is number 4 on our list today. These 25 forgotten poor man cold creams were designed for one specific purpose, which was complete moisture preservation. They helped women aging alone at bathroom mirrors maintain their beautiful faces using nothing but basic, heavy ingredients. People stretching a tiny pension across 30 days could not afford fancy modern watery lotions, but they still wanted luxury. Hit that subscribe button right now so we can explore these forgotten homemade mid-century methods together. Number 25 is the classic mineral oil and borax theatrical cold cream whip. This was the absolute standard heavy cleansing cream used by every single stage actress and frugal housewife alike. You mixed warm mineral oil with a tiny pinch of borax dissolved in water to create a pure white emulsion. The borax acted as a natural emulsifier that held the oil and water together in a completely solid, heavy cream. Women would slather this thick white paste all over their faces to melt away heavy makeup and daily city grime. Then they wiped it completely off with a soft tissue, leaving a thick, protective layer of mineral oil behind. It was incredibly cheap and provided a massive barrier against the harsh, dry air of old, poorly insulated houses. Number 24 is the pure rendered lard and lavender essential oil night whip. Lard was a totally ubiquitous cooking ingredient in every single poor mid-century American household. Frugal women discovered that whipping purified pork fat with a tiny drop of lavender oil created a beautiful heavy cream. The animal fat closely matched human skin lipids and absorbed flawlessly into severely dry, aging faces while they slept. The lavender completely masked any lingering, savory smell and provided a deeply relaxing aromatherapy experience before bed. This thick, buttery cream completely eliminated the terrible dry, peeling skin that plagued women during the long, dark winter months. Grandmothers who used this cheap method possessed incredibly soft, plump cheeks that rivaled the skin of very young children. It was a perfect example of using ordinary kitchen scraps to perform brilliant cosmetic miracles for absolutely zero extra money. Number 23 is the heavy lanolin and rose petal night paste. Lanolin is the thick natural wax extracted from sheep wool, and it is an absolute miracle for severely dry skin. Women would buy a cheap tube of pure lanolin from the local pharmacy and warm it on the kitchen stove. They folded in crushed dried rose petals to give the incredibly sticky wax a beautiful feminine floral scent. This dense, sticky paste was spread over the face and neck to instantly plump severe wrinkles and stop harsh moisture loss. The lanolin holds 400 times its weight in water, making it the ultimate natural skin hydrator. Grandmothers swore by this exact combination to survive the freezing months without looking aged and heavily weathered. It was a thick, fragrant night mask that worked better than anything sold in modern luxury department stores today. Number 22 is the sweet almond oil and orange blossom water cold cream. Almond oil was slightly more expensive, but women bought tiny bottles of it for special occasions and Sunday church preparations. They melted beeswax and slowly whisked in the sweet almond oil and incredibly fragrant orange blossom water. The result was a completely luxurious, fluffy white cream that smelled like a beautiful, blooming citrus orchard in the spring. The almond oil delivered heavy vitamin E, while the orange blossom water gently brightened the dull, aging skin complexion. Women would massage this decadent cream deeply into their laugh lines and let it sit for a full half hour. This completely natural treatment gave their faces a lifted, bouncy appearance that lasted for several entire days. It felt like an incredibly expensive Parisian cosmetic product, but it was made right on a simple wooden kitchen table. Number 21 is the completely solid, pure vegetable shortening and lemon oil cream. Crisco vegetable shortening completely revolutionized the American kitchen but it also completely changed frugal vintage skincare. Smart housewives realized that this solid white vegetable fat was the absolute perfect ready-made cold cream base. They would scoop out a large spoonful and whip it violently with a single drop of bright lemon oil. This created a thick, fluffy facial cream that melted instantly the exact moment it touched their warm, aging skin. The heavy vegetable oils locked in massive amounts of moisture, while the lemon oil provided a subtle, brightening chemical peel. After wiping it completely away, their faces were left incredibly smooth and soft with a remarkably youthful, healthy bounce. It was the absolute cheapest way to repair a face that had been damaged by harsh, cold winds and hard labor. Number 20 is the raw cocoa butter and vanilla extract soothing winter cream. Cocoa butter was sold in hard yellow sticks at the pharmacy for treating severe winter-chapped lips and cracked knuckles. Frugal women would shave pieces of the hard butter into a small glass bowl and melt it gently over boiling water. They stirred in a drop of pure baking vanilla extract to create a cream that smelled exactly like fresh, warm cookies. The heavy cocoa butter filled in the deep, damaged gaps in the facial skin barrier completely and beautifully. As the cream cooled, it hardened into a solid, fragrant balm that protected their faces from freezing winter blizzards. Regular use gave their faces a subtle plumpness that completely masked the grey pallor of advanced age. It was a delicious-smelling, decadent treat that firmly lifted their skin without requiring a trip to a fancy beauty salon. First pattern break to discuss the sensory experience of these vintage heavy creams. Here is where things get deeply personal for many women, who vividly remember watching their mothers get ready for bed. The cold creams on this list are not just desperate attempts to moisturize dry skin on a very tight budget. They represent an entire forgotten sensory ritual of womanhood that modern watery lotions have completely and utterly destroyed. A grandmother living entirely alone today faces a cosmetic industry that only sells thin, useless gels in plastic pump bottles. The modern creams absorb instantly and leave the skin feeling tight and desperately dry just 10 short minutes later. But opening a heavy glass jar of homemade beeswax cold cream is a totally different physical and emotional experience. The thick, fragrant cream requires you to actually stop and deeply massage your tired face with your own warm hands. When your joints ache and the world feels incredibly fast and confusing, these heavy creams ground you in the present moment. Taking 10 minutes to apply a thick rose-scented paste is the difference between caring for yourself and totally fading away. That is what these solid mid-century creams were truly built for, in those quiet, vintage bathrooms. They were built for basic emotional survival and the fierce preservation of personal dignity through the power of daily routine. Number 19 is the heavy olive oil and beeswax completely solid healing salve. Olive oil was a staple in immigrant kitchens, and thrifty grandmothers knew it was the ultimate cure for aging skin. They melted pure yellow beeswax and aggressively whisked in the dark, heavy olive oil until it formed a thick, solid salve. This green-tinted cream was extremely heavy and was only used by women with incredibly dry, paper-thin senior skin. This dense, sticky mixture was painted onto the face and left there for an entire hour while they rested quietly. The heavy lipids in the olive oil penetrated deeply to stimulate collagen production in the very lowest skin layers. The solid beeswax delivered raw protective proteins that literally patched the broken areas of the aging skin moisture barrier. It was the ultimate heavy lifting cream for women who needed massive physical intervention without spending actual money. Number 18 is the plain beef tallow and chamomile tea soothing night whip. When women needed a cream to calm severely angry red skin, they turned to the absolute cheapest animal fats available. They purified white beef fat and whipped it with strongly brewed chamomile tea until it became light and incredibly fluffy. This soothing, thick mask was spread over the face to instantly plump severe wrinkles and stop horrible raw inflammation. The tallow matched human skin oils perfectly, while the chamomile tea soothed the deep red windburns on their older cheeks. It was an incredibly heavy treatment that locked in hydration and made the face look remarkably tight and flawlessly smooth. Grandmothers in the Midwest swore by this exact combination to survive the freezing months without looking aged and severely weathered. It was a perfect, reliable, weekly treatment that required absolutely no special ingredients and caused zero harsh skin irritation. Number 17 is the thick castor oil and zinc oxide sun barrier cold cream. Women in the 1950s did not have modern invisible chemical sunscreens to protect their faces while hanging the laundry outside. They mixed thick, sticky castor oil with white zinc oxide powder to create an incredibly dense, protective daytime cold cream. This heavy white paste physically blocked the harsh sun rays and prevented the formation of terrible dark brown age spots. The ricinoleic acid in the castor oil kept the skin massively hydrated, even under the brutal baking afternoon sun. It looked completely chalky and white on the skin, so women only wore it while doing heavy chores around the yard. But when they washed it off, their skin looked like perfectly smooth porcelain, completely devoid of heavy sun damage. It was an extremely aggressive preventative treatment that kept their complexions looking incredibly even and remarkably bright and youthful. Number 16 is the pure mutton tallow and rose geranium essential oil cream. Mutton tallow, which is the rendered fat from sheep, is perhaps the absolute heaviest and most moisturizing fat found in nature. Frugal rural women would take this incredibly dense fat and mask its strong animal scent with bright rose geranium oil. They whipped it into a stiff, fragrant peak and kept it in a beautiful glass jar on their wooden vanity tables. The massive amount of natural vitamins in the mutton fat instantly energized tired, sagging skin cells and brought blood rushing forward. The cream smelled intensely of sweet summer flowers, but the firming results were totally undeniable after just one single use. It tightened the loose skin under the chin and completely erased the tired grey look of a long, hard week. This was pure nutritional lipid therapy applied directly to the outside of the body for literal pennies a day. Number 15 is the grapeseed oil and fresh lilac water springtime cold cream. When the lilac bushes bloomed in the early spring, frugal grandmothers gathered the purple flowers to make sweet floral water. They emulsified this fragrant water with cheap grapeseed oil and a tiny bit of beeswax to create a light, fluffy cream. This incredibly fragrant, purple-tinted paste was the ultimate soothing treatment for stressed, sagging, older faces. The natural astringent properties of the lilacs tightened the large pores, while the grapeseed oil provided incredibly light, weightless moisture. The beeswax trapped the beautiful floral hydration deeply inside the freshly revealed layer of newly exposed skin cells. Applying this sweet cream made a lonely widow feel like an elegant queen for 20 incredibly peaceful evening minutes. It was a completely free backyard beauty miracle that healed their skin and comforted their tired, heavy, lonely hearts. Number 14 is the pure sesame oil and raw honey solid sleeping cream. Sesame oil was occasionally found in specialty markets, and women prized it for its incredibly rich, thick, moisturizing texture. They would blend the heavy oil with a dollop of thick, sticky honey and enough beeswax to make it totally solid. This sticky golden cream was applied strictly at night because it was far too shiny and heavy for regular daytime wear. The honey provided powerful antibacterial healing, while the heavy sesame oil deeply repaired the broken cellular structure of their aging faces. It was a messy cream that required a towel over the pillowcase, but the morning results were absolutely staggering. After washing away the sticky residue, their faces possessed a flushed, youthful plumpness that lasted for several long days. It was a targeted clinical overnight treatment that utilized absolute basic kitchen pantry staples instead of expensive luxury dermatology. Number 13 is the cheap peanut oil and beeswax deep moisture budget cream. When absolutely every other oil was too expensive, thrifty housewives turned to standard heavy peanut oil for their cosmetic needs. They melted the cheap oil with a large block of beeswax to create an incredibly stiff, yellow facial moisturizing balm. This dense cream required intense physical warming between the hands before it could even be spread onto the face. The massive amount of vitamin E in the peanut oil repaired the broken skin barrier almost immediately upon direct contact. The extreme physical massage required to apply the stiff cream brought massive, healthy blood circulation to their sagging, tired cheeks. This completely natural treatment gave their faces a lifted, bouncy appearance that held its shape for several entire days. It cost absolutely nothing extra because all the ingredients were already sitting on the kitchen counter waiting to be used. Number 12 is the sunflower oil and dried calendula flower healing cold cream. Sunflower oil was incredibly cheap and abundant, making it the perfect base for massive batches of homemade mid-century cosmetics. Women would steep bright orange calendula flowers in the oil for several weeks until it turned a deep, rich golden color. They then thickened this healing-infused oil with simple beeswax to create the ultimate cream for terribly irritated, angry skin. The natural resins in the calendula flowers fought severe inflammation and healed any tiny microabrasions instantly and completely. The thick sunflower oil provided deep, heavy lipids, while the beeswax drew moisture into the newly repaired skin cells. After wiping away the excess cream, their faces looked incredibly calm, sculpted tight, and completely awake without any terrible morning swelling. It was the absolute best free healing trick ever invented by tired, resourceful women who hated wasting absolutely anything. Second pattern break to discuss the massive deception of the modern, watery skincare industry. Here is something the gigantic modern cosmetics industry absolutely does not want you to ever think about or fully realize. These forgotten heavy cold creams cost almost nothing because they use completely unrefined fats that stores cannot mark up heavily. There is absolutely no brand loyalty or massive corporate profit margin in a simple block of plain rendered beef fat. That is exactly why you never see television commercials for these incredible, heavy, solid, homemade moisturizing facial creams. The basic fats and kitchen staples that keep seniors looking dignified are things nobody can make millions of dollars from. Instead, they sell tiny jars of chemical water for $90 that completely evaporate from your skin in 5 minutes. The economics of the massive beauty industry are not very complicated, but they are incredibly cruel to aging people on tight budgets. Every time a senior mixes beeswax and olive oil, they are quietly rebelling against a system designed to completely bankrupt them. They are bypassing the aggressive marketing lies that say aging is a terrible disease, requiring extremely expensive, thin chemical serums. By returning to the simple, heavy fat wisdom of the 1950s, we completely reclaim our own natural personal dignity. True glamour and physical maintenance have always been completely within our own daily control and absolutely affordable for everyone. Number 11 is the absolute simplest, raw milk fat and rosewater pure emulsion. For women living on actual working dairy farms, the absolute best skin cream was literally floating at the top of the milk jug. They would skim the thick, heavy yellow cream off the raw milk and whip it fiercely with a splash of sweet rosewater. This created a completely natural lactic acid cold cream that rivaled highly expensive chemical clinic peels in its extreme effectiveness. As the heavy milk fat sat on the face, it deeply moisturized the skin, while the lactic acid dissolved the heavy layer of grey, dead cells. The rosewater pushed deep, healing, floral moisture into the fresh, baby-soft skin that was beautifully revealed underneath the dead layer. Women who used this heavy, raw cream maintained completely flawless porcelain complexions well into their late 80s and 90s. It was incredibly cheap, perfectly accessible, and flawlessly effective for completely erasing the terrible visible signs of hard agricultural aging. Number 10 is the luxurious peach kernel oil and simple beeswax firming cream. Peach kernel oil was considered a massive luxury, but frugality meant saving the pits from summer canning and extracting the tiny oils. Clever grandmothers would carefully crack the pits and press the heavy, fragrant oil to mix with their standard solid beeswax base. The resulting cold cream was incredibly smooth and absorbed into the deep tissues much faster than heavier animal cooking fats. The natural fruit vitamins in the peach oil physically lifted the heavy dirt out of their pores while shrinking the openings completely. The beeswax calmed the skin and prevented the delicate face from becoming severely red and angry-looking in the harsh winter. This three-ingredient miracle made their skin texture look incredibly refined and tightly woven, exactly like a young girl. It was brilliant kitchen chemistry that solved a massive cosmetic problem without requiring any expensive trips to the fancy city pharmacy. Number 9 is the solid coconut oil and fresh mint leaf cooling summer cream. During the brutal, boiling Midwestern summer months, older women needed a very thick cream that would not completely melt off their faces. They infused solid white coconut oil with crushed fresh peppermint leaves from the backyard garden and chilled it in the icebox. This freezing, thick, minty paste was spread over their hot, tired faces while they rested in front of a simple electric fan. The extreme cold of the mint instantly shrank the heavy, swollen facial tissues back against the underlying firm bone structure. The thick coconut oil provided a tight, physical, moisturizing film, while the mint completely healed any horrible, red, painful sun damage. When they wiped it away, their faces looked entirely refreshed, perfectly tight, and completely impervious to the terrible, thick summer heat. It was the ultimate seasonal moisturizing trick that cost exactly nothing if you grew the simple green herbs in your own backyard. Number 8 is the plain glycerin and rosewater, completely solid jelly cream. Women who could not afford expensive heavy oils turned to cheap bottles of clear, sticky vegetable glycerin from the corner drugstore. They mixed the sticky glycerin with rosewater and a large amount of gelatin powder to create a bizarre, solid, bouncy cream. This strange, dense jelly was incredibly hydrating and felt exactly like a highly expensive modern moisture mask when applied. The glycerin acted as a powerful humectant and literally pulled invisible moisture from the air straight into their aging, severely dry skin. The solid gelatin provided massive structural thickness to the mask, while the rosewater locked all that beautiful floral hydration completely inside. This weird jelly treatment made a thin, aging face look incredibly plump, bouncy, and wonderfully full of youthful, vibrant, healthy life. It was a masterclass in utilizing specific cheap pharmacy staples for targeted, heavy-duty, topical, cosmetic, physical reconstruction. Number 7 is the walnut oil and beeswax, heavily astringent, lifting night cream. Walnuts were often gathered for free in rural areas, and their heavy, dark oil was completely prized for its strong, astringent properties. Thrifty women pressed the dark oil and whipped it violently into their hot, melted beeswax to create a firm, brown-tinted cold cream. This incredibly messy, heavy paste was scrubbed into their sagging jawlines and left to sit for 20 long, quiet minutes. The massive topical dose of natural tannins completely constricted the facial blood vessels and drained all the heavy, puffy fluid entirely. The heavy, thick oil completely replenished the stripped lipid skin barrier almost immediately upon direct physical contact with the face. After a warm rinse, their faces looked incredibly sculpted, tight, and completely awake without any terrible morning swelling or redness. It was the absolute best free contouring trick ever invented by tired, resourceful women who hated wasting absolutely anything in their pantries. Number 6 is the completely raw, unrefined shea butter and jasmine flower vintage whip. Shea butter was not common everywhere, but when a mid-century woman could find a block of it, she treated it like absolute gold. They would take the hard, raw, incredibly smelly butter and whip it over gentle heat with strongly brewed sweet jasmine tea. This created an incredibly thick, luxurious white body and face cream that could completely cure the absolute worst cases of cracked, dry skin. The raw, unrefined butter physically sanded away the dead skin feeling that made deep wrinkles look so incredibly dark and highly prominent. The jasmine completely masked the strange, nutty smell of the raw butter and provided a powerful antibacterial healing floral shield. This simple routine left their faces feeling as smooth as a piece of polished glass and remarkably tight to the touch. A single block of raw shear provided 2 entire years of incredible facial resurfacing for less than a single silver dollar. Number 5 is the pure oat-infused beeswax and thick honey-soothing cream. Grandmothers knew that plain, dry oats were the absolute ultimate cure for severely irritated, itchy senior skin that could not tolerate regular soap. They steeped ground oats in warm olive oil and then thickened that incredibly soothing oil with beeswax and a drop of dark honey. This incredibly sweet-smelling, thick yellow paste was spread thickly over faces that had lost their youthful, bouncy volume and healthy color. The natural oat proteins completely eliminated all red inflammation, while the heavy beeswax worked to plump the hollow, thin senior skin. As the heavy cream cooled on the face, it provided a very gentle, comfortable, physical lifting sensation across the entire jawline. It was the perfect, reliable weekly treatment that required absolutely no special ingredients and caused zero harsh skin irritation whatsoever. Grandmothers swore by this exact thick mixture to maintain a calm, smooth, and perfectly dignified appearance well into their 90s. Number 4 is the absolute legendary pure beeswax and highly concentrated rosewater heavy cream. This is the exact incredibly famous recipe mentioned at the very beginning of this long video because it is the absolute gold standard. A working-class mother melted 1 large block of pure yellow beeswax and aggressively whisked in a heavy splash of strong rosewater. She beat it with a simple kitchen fork until it formed a totally solid white emulsion and painted it over her entire face. The beeswax provided massive amounts of pure protective lipids, which are the absolute foundational building blocks of youthful, tight, smooth skin. The cream acted as an incredibly heavy physical barrier, while the rosewater drew massive hydration into the deep facial tissues overnight. She left it on while she slept and wiped it off in the morning to reveal a miraculously lifted, beautifully bouncy face. This 2-ingredient cold cream miracle is the absolute greatest anti-aging secret ever created in the humble vintage American kitchen. Number 3 is the whipped lard, apple cider vinegar and honey extreme acidic cream. When a woman needed a cold cream that would completely resurface her terribly damaged skin, she used this exact harsh method. She whipped pure white pork fat into stiff peaks and folded in drops of burning apple cider vinegar and thick raw honey. This greasy, acidic foam was applied to the face and acted as a completely solid, unmoving, heavy chemical peel and deep moisturizer. The vinegar provided a massive chemical exfoliation, while the heavy lard physically protected the skin incredibly well from any severe burning. It was an extremely aggressive treatment that tingled slightly but produced completely undeniable and dramatic physical smoothing and lifting results. When the grease was wiped away, the skin looked incredibly tight, shiny, and completely devoid of any deep, visible wrinkles or dark spots. It was absolutely not for the faint of heart, but it worked vastly better than any expensive modern chemical serum ever possibly could. Number 2 is the thick lanolin warm milk and raw honey completely sticky firming paste. This was the absolute gentle, sticky workhorse of the vintage frugal beauty routine, utilized by millions of older, isolated American women. Thick, pure lanolin wax was mixed into a solid paste using warm milk and a heavy spoonful of dark, sticky local honey. This comforting, warm, heavy mask was spread over faces that were tired, irritated, and severely sagging from a long, hard, exhausting week. The lanolin completely eliminated all dry, flaking skin, while the milk and honey worked together to physically plump the hollow cheeks. As the sticky paste cooled and hardened, it provided a very gentle, comfortable physical lifting sensation across the entire tired face. It was the perfect, reliable weekly moisture treatment that required absolutely no special ingredients and caused zero harsh skin irritation whatsoever. Grandmothers swore by this exact, extremely sticky mixture to maintain a calm, smooth, and perfectly dignified appearance well into their very late 90s. Number 1 is the absolute simplest and most profound heavy cream ever invented, which is just whipped Vaseline and water. The greatest forgotten cold cream our grandmothers swore by was simply heavy petroleum jelly whipped violently with plain cold tap water. While the complex beeswax and rosewater creams performed absolute miracles, the true secret was the iron discipline of their daily moisturizing routines. They whipped cheap Vaseline until it turned stark white and became a completely solid, luxurious-feeling heavy facial cold cream. They used this incredibly cheap cream to stay beautifully hydrated, and they never ever went to sleep without heavily caring for their own faces. For a senior living entirely alone, the act of applying a thick, heavy, homemade cream is far more than just physical skin nutrition. It is a powerful emotional connection to every resourceful woman who ever managed to stay beautiful with absolutely nothing in her pocket. When you mix these simple, heavy fats alone in your quiet kitchen, you remember that you are still entirely worth the physical effort. Here is my personal specific challenge to you for this upcoming very quiet week. Go into your kitchen and mix just one of these solid, heavy creams right now. Try the beeswax and olive oil, or the simple whipped Vaseline, and put it on your face while you rest quietly. Then look in the mirror and realize that true, dignified, lasting beauty does not require a massive bank account or expensive watery lotions. These forgotten, thick, solid recipes were never just about saving a few dollars at the extremely expensive local pharmacy cosmetic counter. They were entirely about staying proudly human and highly visible when the modern world makes it incredibly easy to just stop trying altogether. Share exactly which thick, heavy cream recipe you are going to mix up right down in the comments section directly below. I truly want to know if the classic beeswax gets more love than the totally strange, modern-sounding whipped Vaseline water trick. Because these are not just silly old cosmetic recipes, they are absolute historical proof that simple, heavy moisture can be an act of massive human dignity.